All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Never Stop Healing podcast. This is your host of the morning, Cade Archibald, and I am joined with some really, really cool people, and I'm excited to be going into some really cool stuff. If you missed it last week or last night, I feel really bad for you. You missed a great hack or health accelerator challenge. If you're not a part of the health accelerator community, reach out to us. You can go to acueastwest.com/hack, or just shoot us a text 801-582-2011. And let's see that come around. So we want you part of this community. We had an amazing hack last night, went over some really cool stuff. And I'm really excited about the challenges. So let's see, the challenge this week, Regan.
The immune system tapping.
Yes, so we're doing the thymus gland tapping. There we go. I just needed a little nudge.
It's all right. It was about 12 hours ago, so we don't expect any memory of that.
My short-term memory this morning is fried, especially after realized that a lot of confirmations and reminders did not go out this morning. So I'm trying to get those sent out to everyone right now. So we'll make sure everyone can join us. So awesome. And we got the lovely Andie Bryce on with us.
This is hilarious. Every week I get this special introduction. I feel like it, I feel like a movie star.
Well, you kind of are. You're the token Aussie for our whole group.
Cade, Hunt, Archibald. I'm a New Zealander, dude.
Kiwi, right?
Yeah. Oh,
I'm sorry. I totally jacked that up. Oh my
God. Yeah. Oh. Rookie error.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Well, welcome. Glad you were able to join us. And as usual, we got the creator, founder of East West Health, Go Wellness, and the Health Accelerator programs, Regan Archibald. Regan, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, really good. Yeah, fun stuff to cover today. And last night was exceptional because we went through quite a few things when it comes to the immune system. We said get some sage, get some oregano or oregano, as Andie likes to call it. Make sure you're keeping your immune system boosted with ginger, garlic. There's just some compounds you can do. You can throw the basil on your salad. There's peppermint that you can put on your salad. I mean, there's so many great things you can do that are really fun, and they add some flavor to your life and can be a bolster to your immune system. So we covered that, and then we talked about the new thymosin alpha-1, which is thymogen alpha-1. So if for those of you who love thymosin alpha-1 and are looking for a way to get more of that, well, Dr. Kent Holtorf has pulled through as promised and created, it's a little different sequence of amino acids, but the end result is very similar to thymosin alpha-1, and it's an oral-based peptide too. So pick up some of that, give it a try for your immune health. Anything else I missed from last night's hack? I think that was the main overview.
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Okay, well, today we're going to jump into some of my favorite peptides. We're going to talk about peptides for high cholesterol, for triglycerides, for hemoglobin A1C. We're going to talk about peptides for weight loss like semaglutide, tesofensin. We're going to jump into MOTS-c, 5-amino-1-MQ. So kind of buckle up because we're going to move through things, somewhat rapid fire. But if you have questions, obviously we'll stop and answer those questions. But we've gotten a lot of comments where patients have said, hey, I want to learn more about two peptides in particular, tesofensin and semaglutide. So I've created a little slideshow for you guys, and so I'll share it with you. So if you are listening on the podcast, then you can go to our YouTube and you can look at some of these slides. But if you just want to listen and you're an auditory learner, then you won't need the slides at all. So this is a image of my teacher, and this is Dr. Chieko Maekawa, and she's now 84, just an amazing human being. And one of the things that she taught me, she said, the greatest sin you can ever commit to your body is overeating. And so, so how do we stop overeating? And Andie, Cade, any thoughts on Dr. Maekawa's kind of profound declaration that overeating is the greatest sin you can place on your body?
Well, it puts so much strain on everything. You know, it's putting strain on your gut, it's putting strain on your joints, it's putting strain on your heart. It's and you know, and particularly you know, if you carry excess weight for a period of time, you know, it's yeah.
Yeah, and I think you nail it there, and you just create a lot of extra work for your body.
Yeah.
You feel your digestive system gets overloaded. Your blood sugar is usually going to spike, and you're just creating this profound inflammatory response throughout your whole system. I am in many cases, Regan has witnessed me sinning by overeating. I that's one thing where I have to really work on that, because I love food and I can bring it on. But yeah, there's certain times where I realize I'll go over and you just feel really crummy. And yeah, you really look at when your body feels crummy, you know, like there's some real damage going on internally, because you know, we can have damage going on internally and have zero symptoms. And so once you start to realize those symptoms, you know, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And also the emotional side too. And, you know, I can only speak from my perspective as a woman, but I know that, you know, women, you know, we tend to give ourselves a really hard time around self-image. And, you know, if we're carrying weight, it has a really emotional effect too.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the guilt of overeating, you know, and you're just like, why did I do that? I feel so crappy. And then you're in bed trying to sleep and your gut's full and you're just like, that was the stupidest. And so really, I think, you know, and Dr. Maekawa, there's so many like pieces of wisdom that I've learned from her over the years. But, you know, that one stands out because I remember one day she's got a dentist in her office, and the dentist is like, you know, he's about ready to have a heart attack, and she checks his blood pressure and she's like, all right, Dr. Peterson, you come over here. And she like calls him over. He has to stand up off the table. He's in his underwear only. And she starts berating him. She's like, you've been overeating, right? Tell me you've been overeating. And he's like, yes, I confess I've been overeating. I mean, it was a massive interrogation. And you can see he's getting you know, a little bit nervous about it. And then she says, that is the greatest sin you can ever place on your body. You stop right now or I will not accept you as a patient. And he says, okay, I'll stop. And sure enough, he like cleaned up, and within 3 months, it was 30 pounds lighter. His blood pressure had normalized, and she literally saved him from an impending stroke or heart attack. I mean, so I think it's something that we need to get a little more serious about. And one of the things that we like to do, we take a little more gentle approach in our influence and persuasion, but we also like to bring in biohacks. And semaglutide is one of these peptides. It's a GLP-1 agonist. And from what I've found in the patients who have used this and in the literature, is that this is one of the things that you can use, one of the peptides you can use to actually get rid of that desire to overeat, because one of the things it does is it delays gastric emptying. And so you're not going to be, you're going to be satiated quicker, and then you're not going to get hungry as fast. And so it's a great way to kind of help backfill if patients have, you know, if there's emotional eating, which usually comes along when we overeat, there's an emotional component we're trying to fill. And so the beautiful thing about semaglutide is it gives you a chance to work with Andie or Jenny or some of our team members here and actually start addressing the emotional side of things without constantly going into guilt and shame and repeating the behavior over and over again. And so beautiful thing about this peptide is it is FDA approved for weight loss. And in the studies, they found that people who used semaglutide, the study went for about 68 weeks, but they found that they lost a very comparable amount of weight as did people who did bariatric surgery, which is far more invasive. And so the way that this works is through the central and peripheral nervous systems. In the central nervous system, and there's a lot of debate about, is it primarily central or is it more peripheral? Well, the primary mechanism is probably in the hypothalamus and pituitary, because it keeps ghrelin from being excreted. And ghrelin is that hormone that makes us hungry. It's the one that makes your stomach growl. And so it stops that ghrelin response. And then the other thing it does on the peripheral nerves is it works on the vagus nerve. So it can reduce your appetite. And also that's where you get that delaying of the gastric emptying. So you feel fuller longer and you have more, you get satiated quicker. So it's kind of interesting. These GLP-1s are a future class of peptides that you'll see that, we've just scratched the surface, and you'll start to see that not only are these going to be more prolific in the future, but studies have found that they improve, they calm neural inflammation. So an inflamed brain, they help promote nerve growth, they improve heart function, they suppress the appetite, they regulate blood lipid metabolism and reduce fat deposition. So it's just an amazing peptide, and the applications are just barely getting started. And so semaglutide, and Andie, I know you actually said you'd talk about this, so I'm not.
No. Hey, my life's an open book. When I went to visit my family for 2.5 months earlier in the year, I was in holiday mode for 2.5 months, which meant I was having treats for 2.5 months. And I know better than that, but it was just, I kind of slipped into this behavior. And over that time period, I put on 10 pounds, and I didn't realize till I got back, because I'm not weighing myself. I'm on holiday, So, and then, I started working at the Salt Lake Clinic, and I went on semaglutide, and I lost the 10 pounds in 5 weeks. It just went. And I found everything you've just described. Like, I was full earlier, I wasn't eating as much, but I wasn't called to eat as much. I wasn't feeling the hunger. But the wonderful thing that I found also, it wasn't, my energy still stayed the same. I didn't feel like my energy waned or anything like that. I did have that slight nausea, which can be a side effect, but only for the first 2 weeks. But it was nothing, for me as an individual, it was nothing that impacted my day. And I did get a little bit of constipation, but I dealt that with some teas, which really helped me. So I was like, the thing to remember though is, I went back to eating clean underneath this.
Yeah.
I was on the semaglutide, but I went back to, I wasn't eating the sweet treats, that I was eating while I was on holiday. So, it is also about changing those habits and addressing what you are actually eating. It's a great kickstart, and I lost the weight I wanted to.
Yeah. Well, and did it make it easier to get off the treats?
So easy. I truly did not miss them.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things. And I noticed that the effects long outlast the semaglutide. When you get off of it, you continually, you're just like, the craving's gone. And so it's not something we want most of our patients on long term. This is like a short-term kickstart, because if you're using it in the long run, some of the risks that you have, like Andie mentioned, when you're delaying gastric emptying, that can pose other issues. As far as like SIBO goes, and lack of protein digestion. So make sure you're taking enzymes with this. That's one of the reasons why you can get nauseated. And this is where Cellcore is really helpful, using your Cellcore with semaglutide. And then a lot of patients have been prescribed semaglutide by their primary care physician, and they're using the full dose of 0.25 milligrams every single week. And that's just too high for most people. And so, make sure you're working with your physician on the dosing. We like to do more of a micro dose of it. And we found that you still get the same benefits as long as you have the lifestyle things in place with far fewer side effects. So semaglutide is one of the, it's an exciting peptide. It works on the heart, the brain, the pancreas, the GI tract, and the liver. So this is one when we see like pre-diabetes, diabetes, we want to get our patients on this very quickly. I spoke to one of our patients yesterday, and we've got him on just a microdose of this, and his insulin aliquots have been cut down by 50% in 6 weeks of being on it. So his endocrinologist is really excited, and he's excited too. So semaglutide, that's a peptide that, for those of you who are looking for kind of a jump start, it can be really helpful. The other peptide we're going to talk about here is one of my favorites, and it's a peptide that is called tesofensin. And if you kind of look at the two big molecules right now that people are talking about when it comes to supercharging weight loss, it's tesofensin and it's semaglutide. And one of the big things that we have, and Andie, you probably see this, but when it comes to weight, one of the big issues that we're trying to solve is helping people change their behavior and change their lifestyle, but not relying completely on willpower. And so, once again, this is where we love these peptides, because they can help change that the cravings in the brain. But Andie, what would you say is kind of the main willpower that people feel like is it sugar cravings, the main thing they can't get over? Is it overeating? Is it
sugar cravings? But also there's quite a sense, I feel, of helplessness, of not quite knowing where to start and having been stuck in a behavior for so long. So this really helps bridge that gap because of the reduction in cravings. It takes away that sense of helplessness. I feel like that's quite a common theme with people that, are focusing on their weight.
Yeah. And I think so too. And I think the helplessness comes too after you've had years of struggle where you haven't gotten the results, or you get the weight off and then it comes right back and you just feel like crap, and you feel like your life has to be so darn restrictive that you can't function socially. And so this is where I've loved peptides, because they just help bypass all that psychological trauma that we go through when we're trying to make big lifestyle changes. And in many of these, with peptides, there's over 7,000 peptides in nature. We've been able to sequence about 10% of those, but we're seeing more and more as the science is emerging. There's some very powerful peptides that can give you a shortcut without having a lot of the adverse reactions. So here's one with tesofensin, and this is an oral-based peptide, semaglutide or semaglutide, however you want to say that one. That can be either oral or a once-a-week injection, and we seem to like the injection more. It's about probably 60% less expensive, first of all, and it's just easy to do once a week. Tesofensin is just oral, but in the studies, actually, it might be something that's even more impressive than semaglutide. And so here's a 2-week study, and then we'll get into the mechanism of action. But the 2-week study, they took 203 obese patients, and what the study found is that the use of tesofensin has the ability to reduce weight 2 times more than any weight loss drug currently on the market. And so in the 6-month clinical trial, the participants lost an average of 25 pounds each. And so this is where, it's been called the novel potent weight loss medicine by the Queensland University of Technology, and has shown minimal side effects. So how this one works, and if you look at like AOD 9604 or semaglutide works on the GLP. It's a glucagon-like peptide. So it's working on those receptors that are found all over the body, but primarily in the pancreas. And then the tesofensine is actually working on the neurotransmitters in the brain. So this is another interesting thing, because remember, the hypothalamus is what's kind of regulating the glucagon-like peptides in the body. And so that comes from the central nervous system in the brain. Semaglutide also works on the vagus nerve, whereas tesofensine works on dopamine and serotonin pathways. And so when you're working on those pathways, what you'll start to see is your cravings for certain foods, like, the greasy cheeseburger, those things go away. You don't need that dopamine rush. So, Andie, you mentioned that helplessness, like, when you get hungry and people are in a pattern and they say, well, I've had a stressful day and I need some reward food. I'm going to go through the drive-through and get a Big Mac or whatever it might be, right? And so imagine if you could just short circuit that, and where you don't even have that thought of going through the drive-through in the first place. Would that make people's lives a little easier?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it does. You're not called to do those things.
Yeah, and the hard thing is just hanging up the phone when the call comes in, because you're going to answer it and be like, okay, what do you got in store for me? Big Mac, that sounds really good. Chocolate brownie, I'm there. But if the call never comes through, then you don't expend your energy and waste your energy on these like small little decisions that in the long run, they can be detrimental to your health. And so,
and also for someone like me that, has been as an adult, not a teenager, I've struggled with eating disorders. It took away a whole conversation, a whole dialogue in my head about food. The whole dialogue was gone. And I was like, oh, this feels so good, because I wasn't called to eat, and, I wasn't having those cravings. So it took away a lot of that dialogue around, if I did have a small treat, there was guilt associated with it, or, trying to plan what to eat and thinking about food and seeing ads on telly and thinking, oh, now I want that. None of that existed. Completely gone. Was awesome.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the thing is you probably don't miss that friend very much, do you? The imaginary friend talking to you about food.
Well, the imaginary 10 friends, no, I don't miss them at all.
Oh yeah, you're having a party. It wasn't just.
There was a lot of noise. There was a lot of noise in there.
That's awesome. Well, tesofensine, if you look at the other things, the first thing they were studying this for was Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And it was first mentioned in like 2001, where they were able to sequence these peptide structures. And then, they started looking at it deeper and deeper. And they said, man, there's some things that this may do, because it's working on that serotonin, noradrenaline, and dopamine reuptake inhibitor. And those are very common to have, problems with in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And so, they took it down that trial, and they're really researching it. But what they realized, like midway through the trial, they said, well, holy cow, this has a massive ability to modulate satiety and appetite. And they found that let's focus this more on weight loss, because obesity, if you think about the chronic nature of it, and 68% of Americans are either overweight or obese. John Hopkins University School of Medicine, they said, well, I think tesofensine might do better in that camp, to help treat patients who really want to get rid of weight. And so in 2008, they started doing major studies, and the typical doses of tesofensine is going to be 0.5 milligrams, and that's a daily dose. You can even go lower and go 0.25 milligrams, or go as high as 1 milligram. And what they found is, in compared with placebo, 12% of the, and in this study, I'll quote it, but 12% of the 0.5 milligram groups, they didn't complete the study, as compared with 29% of the 1 milligram group, and 25% of the placebo group. So 25% of those dropped out. But of the patients who dropped out of the studies, 1 mg arm, 20% did so because of adverse effects, compared with a combined average of 8% in other groups. So what they found is some of these, there may be some ill effects from tesofensine, but usually that's where some of the nausea can be in place there. And they also found that because this is working on the serotonin and dopamine and noradrenaline pathways. Be careful if you're on like a anxiolytic medication or like an SSRI, like, Prozac, Cymbalta, things like that. There can be some adverse reactions. So here's what they found in the studies, that they found that it's working on the hippocampus in the majority of the time. They also found that it worked on the peripheral pathways of dopamine and serotonin, and that it also helped in gene expression of new cell formation. So it did have some antidepressant potential. And so once again, if you're on antidepressants, this might be a problem for you. And then the other thing they found is it increased BDNF. And Cade, I don't know, we've talked about BDNF a lot. Do you remember the brain-derived neurotropic factors, what those are?
Yeah. Love me some good BDNF.
Yeah, you remember any of the ways that you can stimulate it naturally?
So exercise, that's the number one thing, getting into like a flow state. So yeah, doing like something intense, high intensity movement, exercise, activities, like some heavy physical activities like snowboarding, surfing, mountain biking.
That's
Yeah,
it.
learning new things.
Yep. Yeah, pretty amazing. So
So
oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just saying it's so cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so if you think about this, it's like, wow, if we could get some weight off you, but also stimulate some brain-derived neurotropic factors, I mean, that's amazing. So you want to keep exercising when you're on these. But one of the things that tesofensine, one of the reasons why I say it might be superior to like AOD 9604 or semaglutide is the fact that it can give you a nice brain boost. And this one was one of my favorites. I did a cycle of this about 3 months ago. And I just noticed that my brain felt a little better. I didn't lose a lot of weight on it, but maybe 4 pounds, 3 or 4 pounds. But I wasn't really going for that. I just want, I try these out just myself. I did notice more of just a lightness in my brain overall. And so what the studies show is it decreases glutamate. And glutamate's that neurotransmitter that can keep us in kind of alpha and beta state in our brain. And so when you decrease glutamate, you can get into more relaxed brain waves, decrease the synaptic transmission, and increased in neural degeneration was all stopped. And so what they found is that there was this increase in BDNF. So this is Jay Campbell, and what he says about it. He said, one of the first things he noticed was an increase in the brain-derived neurotropic factor production, especially when he fasted for extended periods of times. My energy was higher. That's one thing I did notice on it, was fasting was very easy doing time-restricted eating. He said my energy was higher, my mood was uplifted, my focus was enhanced. Overall, the quality of my life was so much better, and I slept better too. So some great things with tesofensine. So those are couple of newer peptides that are now just being introduced, and we've been using these very successfully. And so hopefully that answers everyone's questions. I see that we have a couple comments that came in. Diane, good to have you on. People are also lazy and don't want to go home and cook a healthy meal. It's much easier to go through the drive-through and get a Big Mac. Yeah, biggie fries and a Coke. Yeah, they don't buy the right ingredients. Yes, and I think she nailed it. Andie, any comments on?
While there is a factor of that, I completely agree. Also, some people need the help to change those behaviors. It doesn't necessarily just come down to laziness. It can come down to so many factors, lack of education, constantly talking to people about really healthy, easy options. Because not everyone wants to spend time in the kitchen. We're not all natural cooks. So it's about having easy options, and even things like, cook once, eat 3 times. Like if you don't like cooking, do a big dish of whatever you're doing. Have plenty of salad in the fridge. It's really about being prepared. So, there are a lot of factors that come into play.
Yeah, I think I love that. Cook once, eat 3 times, and And that's we typically will cook once and eat about 9 times, because it will be like we'll get meat, our resistant starches, and then vegetables in the fridge, cut up fruit, makes it so much easier. So yeah, so good point, Diane. I totally agree. And I do find that every once in a while, having a little bit of some help with education, learning, and then with some peptides can go a long way. So the next peptide we're going to talk about is MOTS-c, and this is one of my very favorite peptides. MOTS-c, the thing I love about this is it's a peptide that is something that's been studied for longevity, but it's also been studied for obesity, insulin resistance. It's a mitochondrial derived peptide. So just to go back to some basic biology, the mitochondria in your cell, there's thousands of them in each cell in your body, and some cells have more than others. Like your cardiac cells are going to have like 10,000 mitochondria. Your brain cells are going to be very similar to that. Your liver cells have about 6,000 to 8,000. And then other cells may only have, 1,000 to 2,000. But MOTS-c, what it does is it opens up the pathway so you get a better spark from the mitochondria in the cell. And so it's like turning on the engine. And the thing I love about MOTS-c is, and all these peptides, is they're working on pathways that already exist in the body, like semaglutide, the GLP. So we have glucagon-like peptide that's already being secreted in our body. But as we age, our bodies sometimes forget how to secrete these peptides because of the epigenetic factors, our diet, our lifestyle, our stress. These things all impede the progress of our body's health. And so by using these peptides, we're just reminding your body how to function again. And MOTS-c is no different. Beautiful thing about MOTS-c is it helps regulate mitochondrial regulation. So what that means is the mitochondria are dying, just like your cells go through what's called autophagy. Your mitochondria go through a process called mitophagy. So when these engines get worn out, your body just discards those and a new engine comes in. And that's the beautiful thing about having stem cells, is they're there to repopulate what's being lost. And then you have peptides that help repopulate what's being lost. So this MOTS-c is a gene that when it's activated, you have insulin sensitivity and then metabolic homeostasis, which means you're going to burn fat more effectively. You're going to have better sugar stability. And then MOTS-c also protects against the factors of age and diet-dependent insulin resistance and obesity. The other thing that it does, and we'll talk about some of these studies, is it targets the skeletal muscle, specifically the satellite stem cells, and activates AMPK. And so these are kind of, I guess that was a little nerdy, but if we look at what AMPK is it's one of those pathways. If you remember, ATP from high school biology is like that adenosine triphosphate is that molecule that activates an energetic spark in your body. So without ATP, we die. We can't do anything. If you have lots of ATP, you're going to be able to run, sprint, jump, do everything you want to do. Your brain's going to think. But AMPK is a secondary energy source. And so when you activate AMPK, and there's plenty of Chinese herbs that do this. Some of my favorites, I talked about one of them last night, which was ginseng, is a great herb to activate AMPK, astragalus, and cordyceps. But MOTS-c seems to have a very powerful effect of activating this AMPK pathway. So you have endless amounts of energy. So how many of you would love to have a little more energy, a little more pep in your step? And I think several of you have used MOTS-c, and it's something that very you guys, it's been very well received. But let's jump into a little science on this. Andie and Cade, I just did a lot of talking. Thoughts on that? Anything I missed?
Yeah, I got some comments on MOTS-c, which is one of my favorites. I've used MOTS-c in a lot of instances. Love the energy level it provides. It's given me a lot. Just I feel like it's stable energy. Love that one. Super helpful. I feel like that I love the combo of doing that and tesmorelin and ipamorelin. I feel like my body composition is way just works out way better.
Nice. Yeah.
Better workouts, better strength, better endurance, a lot of things.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, and we're going to jump into that study. But one of the things MOTS-c does is it's expressed in our bodies and specifically in our muscles. And so when MOTS-c is properly expressed, you're going to have higher levels of insulin sensitivity, which means you're not going to have the blood sugar spikes and drops. And this is another peptide that really can help get you through that old conversation, as you called it, Andie. I think you said you were having 10 conversations in your mind, but part of that is when you lose insulin sensitivity, your body's always hungry for energy, and so it's trying to convince you that you need to go eat that sugary substance.
Yeah, and something I didn't mention in response to Diane's comment was, also associated with people not eating well and being overweight, there's a lot of mental health issues. Sorry, I just wanted to revisit that. But sorry, what Cade said on the MOTS-c was a great point when you said, Cade, something around consistent energy. So evening out those peaks and troughs, and helping you have that stable consistent energy you can call on throughout the day.
Yeah, I think that's something that we hear on this. The big issue, so this comes as a lyophilized agent from one of our pharmacies. The other pharmacy, they pre-mix it. So if you get your MOTS-c and you're watching this video and you're like, how do I mix it? Well, you just take the bacteriostatic water and you spray it into, and the dose will be on the label. So read that and spray the proper amount of bacteriostatic water. You're going to have plenty left over. So don't think you have to put all the water into the powder. And then it's typically a weekly injection, or if you want to break it up into multiple injections, you can do that as well. But very simple to use, but you have one extra step, which is mixing it. And yeah.
Regan, that's also the same with the semaglutide too, is worth a mention, that you're mixing in some of that bacteriostatic water.
Thank you. And make sure you're reading the label, because it's really important not to use semaglutide daily, right? So if you're doing injections, do not use it daily. That can be detrimental. And so MOTS-c, here's some of the research where they looked at mice, and they said, we're going to give these mice who are insulin resistant, they're kind of like diabetic, they're fed a high fat diet. And one group of mice just, they got the placebo. They stayed on the same high fat diet. The other group was fed the high fat diet plus MOTS-c, and they found that that group of mice became less insulin sensitive. But then when you put that into a balanced diet, they found that the mice did actually much better. Surprise! I mean, and I know that we're not mice, but this is where a lot of the research, when they're looking at mechanisms of action, they said, well, it's really helping the methionine cycles, the folate cycle, and the purine synthesis happen, so that you have better AMPK production. And so for those of us who have issues with methylation, like maybe you have the MTHFR variant, MOTS-c can be very important with you, because it helps trigger that methylation cycle by upregulating methionine and folate. So really important to take B vitamins with this, and even some NAD. Here's another study where they made old mice young, and this goes to Cade, where he said, just even energy, you feel just a little more spring in your step on MOTS-c. But what they did is they found these older mice, these are 12-month-old mice, and they found that they were more insulin resistant than younger mice. And so what they did is they said, well, I wonder what would happen if we injected MOTS-c into these mice. Would it change the expression of these mice and help them become younger? And so they injected the MOTS-c for 7 days. And then what they found is the insulin resistance was actually gone for the most part. And they were more like a 3-month-old mice. And then there's another study, which is interesting, is they put mice on a treadmill, and they took old mice and young mice, and they could see which ones, how far they could run. And then they did biopsies of the skeletal muscle, and they found that, obviously the old mice had less MOTS-c expression compared to the younger mice. And so what they did is injected MOTS-c for 7 days into these mice. And then they found that after 7 days, they had the same phenotypic expression of MOTS-c as the younger mice did, and they could actually run farther on the treadmill. So pretty darn exciting when you think about some of the capabilities with MOTS-c. Thoughts on that, Andie or Cade? I mean, for your mice, do you have pet mice?
I just never think of mice as being old.
I think we figured out the recipe of like everlasting mice. I don't know who would.
Yeah, that's not a good one, right?
No, I think if you look at that compared to you go off of my experience, and it makes sense. I think we're not the same genetic makeup obviously as mice, but there's some similarities, and we can definitely glean some information, and it does seem like that's pretty true in myself at least.
Yeah.
You've seen patients get fantastic results with it as well.
Yeah, this is one of the peptides that we love. I mean, there's a study where they took kids, and this is a tragedy in the United States, is the amount of kids with diabetes. They're diabetic and they're obese. And they actually found that by using MOTS-c with kids, they were able to reverse a lot of these like very serious metabolic conditions. And so let's go to one more peptide. And I know this is heavy today, but these are some of the questions that people have asked. And so I wanted to make sure we have just kind of an overview of what some of the best peptides you can use, not only for fat burning, but just for overall health. We're not interested in just helping people lose weight. That would not serve you well in the long run. We want to help you change your lifestyle, change your thinking, your identity of who you are, and help you create your future self faster. By the way, I don't know, Cade or Andie, if you've read Benjamin Hardy's newest book. It's Be Your Future Self Now.
Oh, wow. I haven't, but I love the title. The
Yeah,
title got me already.
Yeah, because he wrote Willpower Doesn't Work, and then he wrote Personality Isn't Permanent, and then now Be Your Future Self Now, which is really cool. So yes. All right, so let's talk about the final peptide we're going to cover today is 5-amino-1-MQ. And this is probably, if I had one peptide that I'd have to choose, this might be the one. This was discovered in 2017 out of the University of Texas, but they found a pathway called NNMT. And what they found is that if you could block this pathway opens up when we become insulin resistant, so you have blood sugar issues and you have inflammation, and it also opens up with fat cells. So fat, by putting on fat on your body, the danger of it is it's sending a signal to your body that's pro-inflammatory. And so your body is not as active that way. And so it slows down your whole metabolic function. And your fat cells are the most metabolically inactive when they're white. And they're white because all of the mitochondria clump in the center, and they're almost like lazy. They're not cleaning their own room. So what we want to do is we want brown fat or beige fat, because what that shows is that your fat is more metabolically active. And 5-amino-1-MQ is a peptide that can do this. And what they found in the research is they found that by inhibiting the NNMT pathway, they could increase fat cell metabolism and reduce the size of white fat cell deposits. And so they in their minds, they're treating a root cause of obesity and related metabolic diseases by going right into the fat cell and changing the entire chemistry. So, in the book, Willpower Doesn't Work, Benjamin Hardy, we'll go back to that. He talks about the environment is what predicts so many things. And I was just talking to one of you yesterday about this book. I think it was you, Allie, and I appreciate you bringing that up. But it reminds me that in our bodies, we have an environment as well. And so if you have a lot of white fat cells, it's going to create a behavior that you don't necessarily like. And so what the researchers did is they looked at this pathway. They said, well, there's this enzyme that slows down the fat burning. And so let's use 5-amino-1-MQ and see what will happen. And so in the studies, they found that when this pathway was expressed, it was 2 times in obese. So it was expressed twice as much in obese diabetics versus healthy controls. But they also found that in this pathway, if you add NAD or SAM or SAM, then you'll actually have more benefits in fat burning. So a lot of you'll notice that we have 5-amino-1-MQ stacked with NAD, and you just get this nice improvement in fat burning. But the other thing is you also get this huge improvement in fitness, like cardiovascular fitness and muscle contraction, which we'll talk about in a minute. But first of all, Cade, Andie, any thoughts on 5-amino-1-MQ or experiences?
No, I'm learning about peptides right now. It's not an area where I've really ever had too much information in this detail. Well, and except for being on semaglutide, but yeah.
Yeah, I got experiences with all these. I could so yeah, 5-amino-1-MQ. I've done, I think, just two of the bottles back in the fall, and that's really what I feel like one of the peptides, along with the tesmorelin, that really sparked a lot of fat loss and like muscle gain for me. And then Sierra's been taking that for the last about month or so, and really like her energy levels seem to be up. She's and body composition's improving as well.
Yeah. And and once again, this one's such a powerful peptide because it is working on the AMPK pathway. So think of this is another mitochondrial derived peptide. So it's actually increasing your longevity. So a beautiful thing about, especially MOD-SC, 5-amino-1-MQ, is it's going to help you live longer and healthier. And so one of the things that the studies have shown is that you're going to have a 6% in body weight in 11 days. Participants who took this had their cholesterol drop by 30%. Fat cells are decreased. The ability for lipogenesis, or the storage of fat, decreased by 70%. This is an oral peptide, which most people enjoy. It increases the effectiveness of NAD. And then the 5-amino-1-MQ, what it did is it activates satellite cells to increase healing in muscles. And then it also helps revert cells back to a quiescent state. So you have more stem cell populations. They found that there's a 2 times increase in cross-sectional area of muscle after damage. So you're going to heal from, when we talk about muscle damage, this is what you're doing especially when you're working a hypertrophy in the gym, is you're going to have a better healing response. And then a 70% long-term increase in contractile force. And they actually have done studies directly on the soleus, which is a muscle on your calf. And they found that contraction force increased by 27% on average, but long term, that's going to stick around. So 5-amino-1-MQ, get on this. It'll give you a pep in your step. Some amazing things it can do. And this one, Diane, yes, it is oral, the 5-amino. So that's it. We covered some great peptides today. Remember, as you go through these, 4 out of 5 people get peptides from the wrong source. So make sure you reach out to us at East West Health, or find somebody who's been trained with Go Wellness and get on the right peptides at the right time, because each of the peptides we talked about today may or may not be right for you. So make sure you use discretion, use medical oversight, and just don't go get on, some of those websites where you can just order it online. We do not know what you're getting there, and the quality is definitely compromised. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed today. Thanks, Andie and Cade, for all your great partnership in this podcast, and we really appreciate everyone in our community for being on.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Nice to see you.
Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We will be back same beautiful time, same beautiful place, right here on Zoomland. Love you guys. We'll see you next week.